What's up, guys? This is going to be the full card breakdown for UFC Fight Night, Blaydes versus Volkov. It's coming up this Saturday, 6 o'clock start time for the prelims. This is a stacked card, in my opinion. A lot of good matchups. Some tough fights to call, but there are some lines that I think that are off. So I'll go through the bets, as I go through the card, and of course I'll pull them up at the end of the video. There are timestamps for anybody that wants to jump ahead. Before the shutdown, 13 out of 19 weeks profit, and since the UFC's come back, 4-2. So, we'll continue to win. I'm seeing solid breakdowns every week in the comments, and a lot of guys that really know the sport. Even if you disagree, if you can tell me why, I respect that. And of course, when the other promotions come back, I'll break those down as well. So now we'll get into the card. First fight of the night, we got Hubbard and Max Rohskopf. So, this is interesting. It kind of reminds me of Tyson Nam and the K1 kickboxer last week, where we have a guy making his debut, not a whole lot of experience, but really good in his discipline. So Max Rohskopf is a really good wrestler. Hubbard, coming off of a loss to, an Olympic wrestler. I think he was a silver medalist, and, he did really well. I had O'Madsen in a bet, parlayed up with Izzy, and it was a sweat midway through the fight, all the way to the end. Hubbard put up a really good fight. And, in this case, he's going to be ready and prepared. He's been training for a fight, where Rohskopf, I think, of course he's short notice. I don't know how much of a training camp he's gotten in, but definitely can't be, on the same level as Austin. And like I said, Austin put up a good performance in his last fight. If he can tire out Rohskopf and avoid the submission for the first round, I think, midway through the fight, it'll be a similar situation where he can take over. And with him being, such a big dog, and, I don't know how the line's looking now, but it was at 2.5 or 6, should be at about, at most a pick 'em, right? I don't know how you can give a guy with no UFC experience that you've seen nothing from, such a big favorite. If he comes through and, has a dominant performance in this fight, he'll be a guy that could warrant odds like that, right? With the line where it's at, I'm a lot more comfortable with Hubbard. So that's the first bet of the night. I'm going to say Hubbard by TKO. Next up, just bear with me here, guys. I got to pull it up. So we got Roxanne Madafferi and Lauren Murphy. This is another one that I went back and forth a bit. I have to admit, even though I haven't been a fan of Roxanne Madafferi over the years, over the last couple, she has really improved. A lot of fighters, once they get up to 20 or 30 fights, you don't see a lot of improvement. Not the case with Roxanne. She derailed Macy Barber's hype train. And, she has really good grappling. She's going to look to get in Lauren Murphy's face, probably get her up against the fence, get that takedown, and, just win a dominant decision. I'm sure that's, what she's going to be looking at as a game plan. For Lauren Murphy, I think she's going to look to use her striking. She is a pretty strong girl. I would give the grappling and the strength to Madafferi, and, that can be enough to win a fight a lot of times. I think that Murphy might be able to get it done here. Definitely no bet. Not interested in that at all, but I'll go with Murphy by decision. Then we got Frank Camacho and Justin Jaynes. I haven't looked into this fight. I might come back Saturday morning if there's any props that are worth looking at and break down this fight. Just because of the fact it's short notice and Camacho's had the full camp. I'm going to go with him, but again, I haven't looked into it enough. Then we got Courtney Casey and Jillian Robertson. So again, a matchup where, this could go a couple different ways. Robertson's got the grappling advantage, but Casey has, pulled off a couple submissions off her back, and she is dangerous there. I give her the striking advantage, but I'm actually going to lean to Courtney Casey to get it done with the striking, kind of just, keep her distance and, outpoint Robertson. So I'm going to go with Casey by decision in that one. Then we got Marc-Andre Barriault and Oscar Piechota. So Oscar Piechota got knocked out by Soriano in his last fight. So, it's hard to get behind him. I was leaning towards Piechota, but then I thought, Barriault might be able to catch him with a shot. He's a guy that doesn't really put his foot on the gas until he's losing. Usually a pretty close fight with him. And I remember in his last fight, I was just really disappointed. Piechota is a submission threat as well. He's a pretty good grappler. I could see him looking to grind out Barriault on the fence. That has been a path to victory for his last couple opponents. Actually, Park, I don't think really used much grappling, but, he did outpoint Barriault, and Barriault didn't look like, he had much speed in that fight. With him not being able to get a full camp or, as good of a camp as he would have been able to. He might be even slower this fight. So it's, one of those ones I'm definitely not really that confident, and that's why I'm not putting anything down on it. But again, I'm going to go with Barriault by TKO. Next up, we got another interesting one, Tecia Torres and Brianna Van Buren. Van Buren's had some impressive performances. She hasn't really had, that, top level fight yet. And I think, that's what UFC has in mind here. Tecia Torres is on a bit of a skid, but she's been in there, at the highest level. Weili Zhang, a couple fights ago, Joanna Jędrzejczyk fought both of them to a decision. So that alone, takes a lot of skill. Even just to last. We've seen, the power Zhang and Jędrzejczyk have. Tecia Torres is a strong girl. I don't think it's going to be easy for Van Buren to muscle her up against the cage. I think it could be a really gritty fight. And with Tecia up at, 2.7, I think that's worth a bet. I think it might even get up a little bit higher. So I haven't pulled the trigger on this one yet, but, it's definitely a fight that I'm looking at betting on. Tecia is a tough girl. I think she is being underestimated. It's not like she's been put out. She hasn't looked great, but I think she's going to have something to prove in this fight. But I don't underestimate Van Buren. Like I said, she's got some decent power in her hands, or at least she throws with volume, right? So definitely a girl that I think in the future is going to be, a contender. I'm going to go with Tecia Torres by decision, though. So next up, Clay Guida and Bobby Green. Clay Guida's been around forever, another one of those guys that's, from the old school era. Bobby Green's been around as well, though, so they both have experience. But I have to go with Bobby Green in this fight. I mean, Clay Guida has some really awkward movement in the cage. He can be hard to hit. He's got really good cardio, right? And like I said, well-rounded, so, he can wrestle. He is susceptible to submissions, though. He has been choked out quite a few times, and, especially when he gets rocked, a lot of times his opponents will go for the submission. I don't think that'll be the case here with Bobby Green, though. I think if he gets a finish, it'll be a TKO, which is possible. Bobby Green is paired up with Blaydes, but that was when, Blaydes had a bit of value. Now his line's all the way down to 1.25. I can't really, recommend that, to be honest, but, that was one of the early parlays that I put in. I do like Bobby Green to win. I'm going to say Green by TKO. Next up, we got Jim Miller and Roosevelt Roberts. This is another fight I'm really looking forward to. I really do like Roosevelt Roberts. I think he's a tough guy. I was, disappointed with his performance against Piechota, but that was a tough fight, right, early on in his career, and he basically got out-grappled. In his last fight, he did look pretty good, but I wasn't overly impressed with Brock Weaver, so, I don't take a whole lot away from that. Jim Miller, he's been fighting top guys his entire career. Basically everybody's on his resume. Anthony Pettis, Trinaldo, Dan Hooker, Oliveira. A lot of them were decisions, though, so he hasn't been put out that often, right? But he is getting to the tail end of his career, and I do feel like his chin can be an issue. So as far as the path to victory for Roosevelt Roberts, I mean, it would be to catch Jim Miller and get that TKO. But, Jim Miller was sitting up at 3-1, and I did put a bet in on him. I think if he can get in on Roberts, he can get that takedown and potentially a submission. And, he does have some decent power in his hands as well. I think that it's going to be a tough fight for Roberts unless he can catch him, like I said, coming in. And I don't underestimate Roberts, but this is another situation where I do feel the line's off. And, there was some value on Miller. So I did put a bet in on him as well. At the time, he was at 3-1. I'm not sure. He might even be up higher than that now on some bookies. But, that's another bet there, Jim Miller. I'm going to say by submission. Then we got Lyman Good and Belal Muhammad. Lyman Good, a guy used to be in Bellator. I was really impressed with him, and I thought he could be a threat in the UFC. And then I believe it was, I'm not sure what season it was of The Ultimate Fighter, but, he came in and he lost a fight that he was definitely expected to win. I thought he would win that season of The Ultimate Fighter, and I was wrong about that. So since then, though, he has looked really good. Really bad performance against Damian Maia was the only, hiccup. Looked good against Rencounter, got the TKO there. They can't put a whole lot of stock in the win over Ben Saunders. But I will say he has a lot of power, and, I think he has some potential to do well in the UFC. Belal Muhammad's a tough guy, though. He's fought a lot of high-level competition, got some notable wins. Looked good against Sato and Millender, right? So it's going to be a good fight. I'm actually going to take the dog here, Lyman Good. I think the line's closer to even. I'm not really interested in a bet. I think it's pretty accurate. I don't, again, I don't underestimate Bilal Muhammad. He is a tough guy, but I'm going to go with Lyman Good. I'm going to say by decision. Then we got Raquel Pennington and Marion Reneau. Raquel didn't look great in her last fight. Marion's 43. Definitely not a fight I'm going to bet. Reneau has pulled out some, come from behind wins. I think it was Sarah McMahon was taking her down at will, and she pulled out a nice submission off her back. Another fight previous to that, she had a really good performance. So there was a time there when I was impressed with Reneau, and I probably even would have picked her against Pennington. But again, she's up there close to 43. The way Pennington looked in her last fight, though, I wouldn't be overly surprised to see Mary and Reneau pick up a decision here. But, I have to go with Pennington. I think she'll be hungry for a win after the loss to Holly Holm, where she basically got grinded up against the cage for the entire fight. She does have power in her hands, so I could see, potentially her getting a TKO. There was a time when she was on a tear herself, but, after that title fight to Amanda Nunes, where her corner didn't stop the fight when they should have, she hasn't looked great since then. So I'm gonna side with Pennington here, but, another one of those ones where I'm not confident. And both of these two, I think, are on the tail end of their careers. Next up, we got Josh Emmett and Shane Burgos, co-main event. I have gone back and forth on this fight. Shane Burgos has a 6-inch reach advantage, and a lot of times, for me, that's significant enough to make a difference in the fight, or, be enough to have me lean pretty heavily towards the fighter with the reach advantage. But, Josh Emmett is a guy that will charge forward, especially if he's losing the fight. He's going to go for the kill, and I'm not really interested in a sweat bet because I could see Burgos, using that reach early in the fight, starting to get away with it and have Emmett just, start chasing him down and, catch him with something. So not really interested in a pre-fight bet. I want to see how this one plays out. I do lean towards Burgos, though. If he can fight smart, I think he can, use those advantages that he has with the size and the reach and get the job done. So I'm going to take Shane Burgos to get it done by decision. It could be, a really good fight of the night potential. I was thinking about putting a bet on Burgos. I'll wait till they mix it up, see how the line looks. Then we got the main event, Curtis Blaydes and Alexander Volkov. I'd say the line is off here. I don't think Volkov should be anywhere close to 5-1. That's way off. But, Curtis Blaydes has looked really good in his last fights. Dominant, right? If he wants to take down, for the most part, he's going to get it. And, if he connects, he can put anybody out. We saw him knock out Junior Dos Santos. So he has looked dominant, and it is hard to pick against him. But Volkov has, a ton of experience, close to 40 fights. He's a really tough guy, and if he can stuff the takedown and, keep it on the feet, it can be a really interesting fight. So again, at 5-1, that's way off, and it's hard for me to recommend, Blaydes in a parlay now. I do have him paired up with Bobby Green, like I said, but that was closer to when the lines dropped. So, a lot of people have Blaydes in a parlay. If you do, I'm not mad at that. But there is a lot of value in Volkov, no doubt. So, I am going to take Curtis Blaydes to get it done, maybe ground and pound. But I am looking forward to this fight, and, I'll pull up the bets now. So the first bet's going to be Austin Hubbard at dog money. And, I think that, the line's off. It should be probably, a pick 'em at best, and if Max is able to get through Hubbard impressively here, he'll definitely be somebody to look at going forward. But, this is going to be a telling fight, and Austin Hubbard is going to be a big test. I do have Bobby Green paired up with Curtis Blaydes. Jim Miller, a smaller bet there on Miller. If you were interested in that bet at 3-1, you only have to put down half a unit to win a unit if you're, not really that confident. And then the other one that I was considering is Burgos as well, right? But that's one where I just want to see them mix it up a little bit. But, let me know who you guys have. Oh, also, sorry, Tecia Torres, skipped over her. That line's off as well. I like her to beat Van Buren. But that's about it, guys. I'm going to wrap it up here. Let me know who you guys have, your bets, any insight you have on the fights. Even if you disagree, as long as you can tell me why, let me hear about it. I appreciate you for watching. I'll see you on the next one.